So today I'm going to do some work on my camellia. I'm going to try and bend it using one of my homemade bending tools. I had thought about my new spiral tool, but the trunk is too thick for it, so I'm going to have to try that on something thinner at some point. Now, the last time I did a camellia bending using wire, this is what I turned out with, a dead stick. So I'm hoping that I don't create that. I don't know if that... All right, so basically, I don't know if the camera can, the camera can see right up there. So I've got a couple of air layers going onto this camellia at the moment because I don't need that whole top, but I just thought that I'll just see if it's the first time I've tried air layering, so I just thought I'd try and see what happens. So my plan is, if I can find that tool, to attach this tool onto here. So I will cable tie it at the point I want the bend, and then I'll strap the lower part down, which should still be sort of standing. No, actually it probably will be attached like that once I've done that, and then slowly pull this down over a number of weeks. Now I am definitely going to do this one with raffia because it does not feel very pliable at all. So I will go through, do the raffia now, which will take a bit of time, and then we'll come back in. So I've had a change of plans. I'm going to try and use this twine, which I bought for this purpose. It's natural jute twine. I don't know if you can actually read that on there, but I'm going to try and wrap it with that just to see how it goes. I may still use the raffia as well, but I just want to give that a try. So I'm going to try the same method as you use with raffia. I've grouped up, in this case, 4 pieces. And I'm just going to tie that on at the base. So I'll just wrap it over itself, just to hold it there, and literally just keeping it reasonably firm, go up the trunk so it doesn't have gaps in there, or very few gaps if I can avoid it. And that should mean that as I bend, it doesn't allow the branch to split, or if it does split, it doesn't just crack completely in half. Just chop the end because it's starting to twist a bit, because at the moment it's just looped. I don't know how well this will work, so I will take it quite carefully as I start to apply some bending pressure. So I'm literally just using cable ties, so I'm going to need 3 for this purpose. 1, 2, 3. I'm using ones of a reasonable thickness, so that they've got some strength. And basically all I'll be doing is threading them through these brackets, which sits on the outside of the bend, and threading one side through the mould and literally attaching onto the tree like that. So I'll just position it so that it's roughly where I want it, and I'll tighten that one up reasonably securely because that's the one that holds everything in place. So because of the string and the fact that these bits are reasonably wide, it should stop any denting into the branch. Alright, then I'll put the next one on at the bottom. Slide another one of my end brackets over. If I can get the cable tied through, there we go. So pull that one down as low as I can get it. Now there is a branch a little bit in the way there, but I think we can work around that. Okay, so that's the major part. Now that is pretty stiff, so I am going to have to be quite careful with this. I may even need to put 2 cable ties to get the angle. In fact, looks like I might have needed to string a bit higher for this. So I can just make that fit, but what I'm going to do is actually put a bit more string further up. Through my back bracket, right the way through to there, and then loop into this one. Okay. So now, with me needing a little support to keep it in the right spot, I've shaped this so that you can easily hold your finger under it and bend it. My first design didn't have any way of doing that, and it was very hard to get that bend started. So I'm just going to pull that down a little. Now I'm actually having a problem with it sliding down the tree, so I'm going to put a tie just to hold that where I actually want it to sit. Hopefully that will stop it sliding down. So I'll twist that so you can hopefully see behind my hand. And I'll just put a little bit of pressure on. And that will do for the moment. I've already got the bend started. So it's a bit hard to see through everything, but it has actually started to pull over, and with the tension on there, it will continue to bend over in that direction over time. So every couple of days I will add a little bit more tension on that, and depending on how far down I pull it, will obviously determine my overall bend radius. Okay, so it's the next day after having done the bending on this, and as I mentioned yesterday, it's quite stiff. So I was just thinking overnight, what do people use to bend wood? Dry wood, and even more green wood for bows and arrows and things like that, and it's basically hot water. So what I'm going to try, I've got some water here that I boiled about 20 minutes ago. It's still pretty hot, but it's not scalding hot, and I'm just going to try wrapping that around to try and get some of that heat in. So I'll do it a couple of times before I try the bend. So I'm basically just going to get the string so it's soaking in the moisture, and that should warm up the wood inside, and just see if it's any easier to bend once I've got that wood nice and warm. Okay, so what I've ended up doing, because it's bound in string and the water is not so hot that I can't put my fingers into it, I've just ended up literally dripping it down just so that the string itself is absorbing all of that moisture, and will then transfer it into the trunk as both moisture and heat. So I've done this for about 5 minutes now, and I think that will be long enough for me to try and do some more bending. Okay, so unfortunately my elbow will probably be in the way, although if I do it from the back here I can let you see. So using my finger grip, and I'm just going to pull this down and tighten up a little, and do the same again. Okay, so I did get quite a bit of movement that time. I was reasonably forceful, and I'm going to go a little bit further with it. So I think the hot water is helping. It's hard to tell without using a before and after strain gauge, but I don't need to be that precise. Whoop. Now that one did just put a kink in it, so I'll have to stop there. Fortunately, I know I've got my twine or string there to protect it, so I won't be doing any more bending on this for the next month or so. So I'm just going to leave it like that, and probably when I complete this video will be in a month. We'll have a look at it and see how it's going, see if it's wilted as a result of this. But the cambium on the underside should all be intact, so the split is somewhere around about here. But because it's all tied together, I'm not too concerned. It should hold itself in quite nicely there. But I'm not going to push it any further because it will continue to crack at this stage. But yeah, I did obviously get a significant amount of bending before we did crack that. But yeah, obviously cracking's not ideal, so I will leave this one at this point and see you when I do the next update. All right, today we're working inside because it's just a bit too cold outside, and I'm working on my camellia that, if you've just watched the last video, or it's probably been inserted just before this section, I broke it accidentally, and I'm basically wanting to get off these air layers down the bottom here and take the weight off this part and hopefully do another bend the other way, maybe not as intense so I don't crack it again. But it seems to have survived. All of the air layer is still alive. So what I'm going to do is just cut these two sections straight off. And the main reason I'm just doing that straight off is we're starting to head towards the warmer season. I want to give this part the best chance it has of growing. The air layers were purely just to make use of the upper section. So without further ado, let's just chop them off. So I'll chop there. I'll wind them together so they don't flop around in the wind. So there we have one, a bit of water dripping out of it. And the next one, I'll leave these branches that are just below it, so chop about there, and there we have the other one. So, and I'm guessing by the fact that fell off and there's not a single root in there, I have no idea how it's been surviving, but it has been. So we can possibly jam that one in the ground and might keep it going, but we'll call that one a failure. So we do have a couple of flowers, got a bud there, flower down here, another bud on that one. Get that bit of wire off. Okay, so what I want to see is how much damage have I done. So it does bend quite freely, so it's possibly got a bit of a crack there, but we'll have a look, and after we've looked at it, I'll work out what I need to do to keep it going, and whether using these jigs is actually a good idea or not, because they, well, it's probably more me than them, but they do allow you to apply a lot of force without really needing to, and I guess that's just me being a little bit overzealous. But let's have a look under the string that I put on there just to see what we've got going on. So I'm just literally cutting it off. Try not to score the bark as I get into it. Okay. Yes, I've got a pretty bad split in there. So I had been hoping that because I had wound that string in pretty tight that it would hold it, but I was wrong. And I've got to say, on the other tree that I've tried this same sort of method on, I pretty much did the same thing. So I think these, at least using that amount of bend, are probably not a great idea. Either that, or I've just got to tone down how hard I get with it. All right, so let's have a look. So that does move quite freely in there. So what I'll do, I'm going to put it at least part way back up and wire it into place there. So what I might do while I'm doing that is just put something to prop it upright. So I'll just gently put it back down and I'll go and get something. So I've got some of my heavier gauge wire and I'll basically just make a bit of a cradle for it in that. So I'll bend that down and then just make a little bit of a U-shaped loop, which I'll fold back over the top. And that can go somewhere down here. Chop it off maybe a bit long and then I can size it up. Okay, let's prop you back up. Okay, we'll get that to go underneath there. I'll just bend it in so it doesn't flop around. Okay, so I've got that upright. Next, I'm going to re-bind over this joint and probably get rid of that and go further up. Okie doke. All right, so I'm going to do it with the string again because I can get a lot more tension on that than I can with the raffia. I've got Fergus sitting up above me watching me with quite intent look on his eyes, Okay, let's just ball this up. And throw it in there. All right, let's put this bit of string on. So I'll just leave it in a ball and I'm going to tie it down at the base. I don't know if you can hear Fergus talking to me in the background, but he's making little noises. You can also hear some pigeons outside. All right, so I'm up to where the split is, so I'm going to start to tighten a fair bit more. All right, so we're back. So I've basically wrapped the tree up to part way up that branch there, which is where I plan to do my next bend. I have some reasonable gauge wire. It's certainly not enough on its own to do that, but I'll do 2, possibly 3 layers, and I'll brace probably a couple of layers off of that one. All right, so we'll get into that. I'll probably stop the camera part way through and then we'll come back in. So basically I got feedback that when I'm doing a more intense bend like this, I haven't been putting my wire close enough. So I was working on the 60-degree theory that I had been taught, but that's not for a very acute sort of a bend. Okay, so I have the branch wired with 2 sets of wires. First one braced off of this side branch, and the second one just going down into the base of the pot. And what I would like to do, I wouldn't mind trying to get a bit more of a bend in this region here, and then another bend around about there, bringing it in. So I'm going to do a little bit of this lower one first, trying really hard not to break it this time. And I broke it again. All right, so Tim definitely tries to push the limits too far. I'm surprised at that one because I didn't feel it coming. All right. They do say if you're not breaking, you're not bending enough. All right, so that's at least got my tree looking a bit more towards the upright. All right, so I will continue to work on this after it's had a little bit of mending time again. So I'd really love to hear from people how they do these branches without cracking them, because I'm clearly not doing the right thing here. All right, so what I might actually do is, to support this, is wire this into it. And I can also use that as a bit more support on these bends. Maybe I should have done this to start with, but I didn't think of that. But it's a learning game. This is bonsai beginners, not bonsai experts. And my whole aim is to try and learn and share what I learn. So hopefully both you and myself have learnt something out of that. All right, so yeah, not a total success, but also not a total disaster. It just means my plant will have more character with a couple of little cracks in it. I'm tempted to keep bending. I've got to stop, otherwise I will be in more trouble. All right, catch you next time.